Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Ireland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last little while, quite a few different styles, and I would say that generally speaking, in my experience, this brewery is very solid all round. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't had from them yet. It's a style that I very much enjoy, so I have to say I'm quite curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it carries on in the same vein as some of the other beers we've had from them recently, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to County Donegal in the very northwest of Ireland, Letterkenny to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Kinnegar Brewing. So this particular beer is called Crossroads. It comes in at 6.2% ABV, and they're describing this one as an American IPA. It only contains barley malt though, so I do wonder if we can call this one like a West Coast or a California IPA. So yeah, looking forward to this. I'm a big fan of the old school West Coast IPAs, and it's nice to see that they're getting a little bit more attention in recent times once again. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. A couple of shout outs in this video first though. So first off to Paul Rogers of Dalriada Imports. It's him that's been supplying me with all these lovely Irish beers that I've been reviewing. Paul imports Irish beer over to Scotland, and he's looking to expand that business down into England at the moment as well. So if you see any Irish beer on the shelf in Scotland, chances are it's Paul that's brought that over from Ireland. So a big shout out and thank you to him for making this kind of Irish mini-series possible here on the channel. Shout outs as well to two of my fellow beer tubers in Ireland, Brendan Sewell of Views on Brews, and also Thomas McCarthy of Window Beer Reviews. Both very, very nice guys, very knowledgeable about beer, and they're reviewing Irish beer a little bit more regularly than I am, of course. So if you're interested in Irish beer, those are the two guys that you want to be subscribing to. So I'll try to remember to put the links to their channels in the video description below. So check them out if you get a second. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Kinnegar Brewing before, and you will no doubt see some more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Irish beers that I've reviewed for you, both from the North and from the Republic, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I do have a number of beers that Paul's given me. I hope you're enjoying this mini-series, of course, but as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Kinnegar Brewing once again. So Kinnegar Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in County Donegal in the northwest of Ireland, and the company was founded back in 2011 and then opened back in July of 2013 under the guidance of Rick Levert and Libby Carton. So Rick comes from a background in design and marketing, and he dabbled in home brewing from around 2011, and then he later decided that he wanted to take some professional brewing courses. So he did this at the University of California, Davis over in the US, and also at the VLB Institute in Berlin in Germany. So when they got started, the original brewery was in Rathmullen and had a capacity of 10,000 hectolitres, and from the beginning they were bottling all of their beers, but more recently they've been canning a large chunk of them as well. I think there are a few ones that are still released in bottles, if memory serves me correctly, but they grew very, very quickly in the early days, and this took them to the point where their brewing schedule was just unsustainable. Apparently they were running from 4 AM until midnight just to brew to meet demand, so they moved to a new brewery in Letterkenny, which is called K2, in March of 2017, and this one started off with a capacity of 35,000 hectolitres, and this has allowed them to produce more special and one-off brews in addition to their core range as well. But they say that their beers are farmhouse ales, and so they're unfiltered, unpasteurised and carbonised naturally in the primary fermentation. So yeah, they are pretty cool at that, and I would say that from my experience so far, Kinnegar Brewing's beers have been a little bit more like the likes of Alchemist Brewery or Lawson's Finest Liquids from over in the US, because a lot of the New England IPAs that you get in Scotland actually and over in Sweden and Denmark and things like this tend to be a little bit more like the kind of Trillium wheaty bitey kind of ones, or the more treehousey oaty creamy type things. So it's cool that Kinnegar are doing these ones that are a little bit more kind of yeasty and things like that. But as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 65 different kinds of beer, and they are pretty solid, I have to say. I've seen quite a few different styles from them. So most of the beers that I've reviewed from these guys have been different types of IPA. I think we've had rye IPAs, we've had paleos, we've had New England hazies, but this is the very first West Coast IPA that I've tried from them. So I need to try, I think, a stout or a porter, something from the dark end of the spectrum, and probably a lager from these guys wouldn't go amiss either. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Kinnegar Brewing for the moment. It's been really nice to review their beers over the last little while. If you want to learn more about this brewery, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's it for your history section in this video. Let's get on and have a look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork quickly before we open this one up. There you can see the geese just kind of chilling, looking at the maps and things like that, and there's a dog in there as well. I wonder what, I was trying to remember what the breed of that dog was before actually, because I've seen them about a few times, some kind of terrier. But there you can see it, Kinnegar Brewing, farmhouse beers from Donegal. I do think that's pretty cool. There you can see the rabbit for the Kinnegar symbol. You can also see that on the back of the can here. It is a plain silver top can on this, and it tells you a little bit on the side here. So at the first little paragraph on there is about the brewery itself, so we won't do that, but it says, originally named Road Trip when brewed as a 20th birthday celebration of McHugh's legendary Dublin off-licenses, Crossroads is our tribute to the men and women of Donegal's diaspora who, like the McHughs, have made their mark on the wider world. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I do like this little slogan as well. I think I've not pointed this out in some of the other ones. Follow the hops. So yeah, but yeah, this one, as I said earlier, it contains only barley malt actually, so that makes me think this one, it will probably be a proper old school West Coast IPA actually, but they just call it an American style IPA. Unfortunately, since Paul just gave me this beer, I have no idea what this one would actually cost normally, but yeah, I'm sure it will be pretty good anyway. I need to see what the prices of Irish craft beers are like actually, but if you want to know that, Brendan and Thomas are the ones that will keep you up to date on that. But 440ml can nonetheless, a 6.2% West Coast type IPA. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. It's been awesome to review these Irish beers again, of course, and oh, look at the colour of that. But yeah, for a long time Irish beer was just impossible to get actually. It was a shame. It's a bit like gold dust, but you get some countries that are like that. I mean, in France, had lots of French viewers recently, and they're all asking me to review French beer, but French beer is very difficult to get outside of France actually, so it's really cool that we've got Paul doing this and spreading the word about Irish craft beer, and it's nice to be part of that as well actually. But yeah, anyway, so as you can see, this looks like a proper old school West Coast IPA. So yeah, you can see that this beer, it's poured, first off, before the head disappears, it's poured with about just under a half finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of cream coloured head. That is fading away just to be a very nice sort of thin foamy layer. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but really not a lot of visible carbonation in this one. But the beer itself is a lovely, very bright, kind of almost blood orangey amber colour. I'm not sure how well you guys can see that colour on the camera there. I think my room is a little bit dark today. But yeah, the beer certainly looks, you can see the reflection off the glass as well, where I've had my brewery notes and things like that. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a West Coast IPA, this one, a nice kind of rich blood orangey amber. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating of the beer. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. A West Coast IPA like this is going to undergo a wort boil of, about 90 minutes, something like that, but you can vary this a little bit, remember. But yeah, any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer will also affect affect that as well. But when it comes to an IPA like this, it's not it's not often that you really have to care about that. But yeah, it does look pretty damn nice. The haze in this one is more of a natural haze, which is kind of what you would expect of the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, this is a beautiful looking beer, I have to say. And I don't know if we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this one, to be honest with you. It looks like a very, very nice beer actually, and pretty much what you would expect from a West Coast IPA. So I think we can look at the aroma of this one now then. So curious about this. Let's go for it. Aroma time. Oh yeah, that is a proper old school West Coast IPA. I'm going to say straight away, I'm excited about this one now. I've missed, I do enjoy the New Englands, but because we went for so long without a lot of them, I've really missed the old school West Coast IPAs. And there are some that are properly old school, like with the new wave of West Coast IPAs, they've taken the bitterness of them right down, but I think this one might be kind of bang on the money of a proper old school West Coast IPA. It just smells it. It really does. So, yeah. This one, it smells very nice. It has, this is just a little bit of a nostalgia trip. This is taking me back to, when I first started the channel and the IPAs we were reviewing back then. Probably the thing that this reminds me of here, and for those of you watching in Scotland, this smells like the original Mr. President, the hardcore IPA from Brewdog that they used to do. That was probably my favourite Brewdog beer back in the day, along with the 5 AM Saint. That was an awesome one. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is just awesome. I really like this. Straight away with this one, you can smell that big oily brown sugary note that you want from a West Coast IPA, just that boozy brown sugary element in there, and it's just absolutely lovely. The green component of this one has that nice big deep dankness to it, and you've also got those big oily fruits as well. That's a basic overview of this beer, but yeah, this is properly old school, and I'm just going to say thumbs up to Kinnegar. I can tell I'm going to enjoy this one. But the last beer we reviewed from these guys was the Lime Burner, and I was really impressed with that as well. The Lime Burner, if I lived in Ireland and the Lime Burner was as available, it would be like Schiehallion, or the Harvest and Schiehallion, or the Williams Brothers Caesar Augustus is to me. That would be the kind of go-to session beer. But yeah, this is lovely. So let's just break this aroma down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah, this is awesome. So the backbone of this beer is a nice little bit of a kind of, it's got a lovely little bit of a kind of bread crusty character to it. Absolutely, you can smell a nice kind of mixture of smooth white and brown bread in there. It's barley malt all the way, this, absolutely. I'd be curious to know exactly what malts they're using in this one, because there's something a little bit familiar about it, and I wouldn't be surprised if this has a little bit of crystal or a bit of two-row in it, something like this. Those two malts are very popular when it comes to brewing these more West Coast IPAs, and this one really just smells quite nostalgic and quite authentic to me, so there's something in my head saying it could be one of these that's in there. So yeah, on top of that though, you've got all these lovely kind of boozy brown sugars in there. So you have got a little bit of a straight up caramel. There is a very slightly toasty brown sugar element in there as well, but a lot of nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Maybe there might be a little bit of Maris Otter in this one as well. Maris Otter is a lovely English malt. But as I've said in other Irish reviews, I'm not overly well versed in what Irish malts there are, and of course Ireland is a whisky country just like Scotland is, so they will be producing a lot of their own malt, and I'm sure they've got some varieties over there that will be very, very good for West Coast IPAs like this one. But yeah, lovely big oily caramelly note in there. It has that bit of booziness to it, which is, for a 6.2%er, this one actually smells to me a little bit more like a kind of 8% old school West Coast double IPA, but I don't know if that's maybe due to the fact that a lot of these new wave West Coast IPAs are a bit toned down in comparison to what they used to be, I think. But yeah, this one has a good caramelly brown sugary note to it, kind of big and oily, but around that, as I say, there's a bit of a toasty brown sugar there, but very lightly toasted, and some nice McVitie's digestive biscuity qualities as well. So yeah, the aroma of this one, I think, is The aroma that comes out of this one on the malty side of things is quite nice. There's maybe one or two little woody undertones to it, but yeah, bread crust, mixture of white and brown bread in there, nice big oily caramel, McVitie's digestive, and just a little bit of toasty brown sugar. It's really nice. It just shows you a little bit of that more boozy side of the kind of West Coasty IPA. So on the hoppy side of things then, this is interesting. I think it's kind of more old school hops that are in this. On the green component, there is a wee bit of, there is definitely a little bit of a kind of earthiness at the back of the nose there, but that's quite minimal. Further forward in the nose, you're getting a nice big floral aromatic sort of thing. There is a wee bit of that danky pine resiny note underneath it, which I do enjoy. But yeah, you've got a little bit of that in there, then you've also got a bit of a kind of wet, freshly cut grass kind of thing to it. Maybe a wee touch of zest to the to those kind of things as well. But yeah, aroma wise, this beer I think is very, very nice from that perspective. So yeah, green component again is properly old school and gives you everything you would want from the style. So let's look at the fruity side of things then to round off the aroma. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Now, there's something that's telling me that there's either a little bit of Chinook in this or a bit of Cascade. So the kind of deeper piney resinous notes that you get in there, it's a little bit sort of spicy, I would say. You do get a little bit of that, but you can feel that little deeper, danker, piney resin in there. There is a bit of that kind of almost figgy, juicy, red fruity sort of thing that Cascade will give you. And Cascade to me is a very distinctive hop because, you know, the Schahalian beer that I mentioned earlier, it's a Czech Pilsner with Cascade, and it's just such a distinctive hop to me these days. So that comes out in this one quite readily. Other than that, though, I think this beer, there is a wee bit of a more oily passion fruity note in this, so it wouldn't surprise me if there's a little bit of Simcoe in here. That wouldn't surprise me. But I think there is potentially a bit of Amarillo in this, because it's got that big, oily, orangey, quite zesty character that you would often associate with that hop. So yeah, big, oily, orangey, zesty notes for me. A little bit of a kind of more oily passion fruity note, and then a wee bit of that kind of red fruity character. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like, you know, Chinook, Cascade, Simcoe and Amarillo. I think it's got something, the hop profile on this one is going to be something like that. It doesn't smell quite zesty enough to have Citra in it, which is kind of interesting. But who knows, we might notice that when we actually taste the beer. Let's put the rest of it in then, and we'll have a taste of this and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Crossroads, an American, West Coast, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Kinnegar Brewing in Letterkenny, County Donegal, in the very northwest of Ireland. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Yeah, that's pretty nice actually. Now, it's a wee bit more bready than I was picking up from the aroma, but other than that, it is pretty much what I would have expected. And this is interesting because, as I said to you, the last video that I did from these guys, the Lime Burner, I was really, really impressed with that one. You sometimes get beers that just hit the spot for you. This is another one that's doing that. So, and I think this is potentially one of their more old school recipes. I don't know, it didn't say exactly on the can when this one was produced, but I think for me, in terms of authenticity and what you look for from the style, this is one of the really this is one of the ones that I've had so far from them that impresses me the most actually. So yeah, this is kind of quite interesting. If you want some really old school nostalgic beers, then it seems that Kinnegar are one of the breweries in Ireland that you want to look at. I'm really impressed with this as a West Coast IPA. This is what you would have had back in the day. It doesn't feel quite as bitter, but you know, this is the thing. A lot of new beer drinkers got into drinking the New England IPAs, so they're not used to the 80, 90 IBU beers that we were drinking way back in 2013, something like that. So I can see why this one doesn't have the original bitterness, but it has everything else. Absolutely, but it even has the dankness. It's just the IBU count that's not quite as heavy on this one as I think it would have been back in the day. So maybe they have put a little bit less early edition hop in this than they might have done back then. But this is very nice. It gets a thumbs up once again. So yeah, Kinnegar, they can do a solid West Coast IPA as well. I wonder if they've got a double West Coast IPA. But yeah, that is nice. Yeah, again, it's a big oily slick thing. It's got the sweetness you expect, a wee bit of breadiness, and it's got the lovely big kind of oily juicy fruits as well. So yeah, this beer definitely gets a big thumbs up from me. I can certainly appreciate how this one is going about its business. So yeah, just awesome stuff once again. Let's break this. I wrote this flavour down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth then. So straight away across, we'll focus on the middle third of your palate. Straight away, that middle third of your palate, you can feel a wee bit of that kind of bread crusty note forming the backbone of the beer. It's not too grainy and it's not too dry, but you do get a wee bit of dryness out of it the further you go into the aftertaste. As you push toward the kind of front half of that, or just towards the front of that middle third of your palate, there's maybe a teeny little touch of a woody character in there. On top of that, you've got a nice kind of like sort of mix of brown and white bready character in there, which I really like, and it's quite smooth actually. The bready character in this one is nice and smooth, like you always used to get in these old school West Coast IPAs. But then on top of that, it's all about the biscuit and the brown sugar, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting. So on top of the bready character, you can feel there's this big sort of circle there, and it's quite a big oily circle. On the bottom side of it, it's like very lightly toasted. So in the bottom layer of that circle, it's very lightly toasted. And then as you push out from there towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, that's where you get this sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of thing. You do get a little bit of biscuity character out of this one and just a slightly toasty brown sugar actually, and that's very nice. But on top of that circle I mentioned in the middle of the palate, you've got those big oily brown sugars. So yeah, on top of that, yeah, on top of that kind of brown sugary sort of thing, or that on top of that kind of biscuity sort of thing, I should say, that's when you start to get the big oily caramelly notes out of this one. So you can feel that, and it's interesting because it's really, the caramel is quite sweet on the outer edges of that circle, but then as you move further in toward the dead center of your palate, you can feel that it gets a little bit more concentrated, and these brown sugary characters are just a little bit more sort of boozy actually, and I can really appreciate how that goes together in this beer as well. The slightly more concentrated brown sugary notes are very nice. Yeah, the more that you drink of this as well, the sweeter those brown sugary notes get, and it is like there is a, as I say, you've got a wee bit of that more concentrated brown sugary sort of thing, but the way the caramel in this is, it's really nice and just quite light and bright and sweet. So yeah, the malty side of this beer I think is very well done. So again, that gets a big thumbs up from me. I don't think we really need to say anything more about the middle third of your palate. So let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So border region between middle and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up there, a wee bit more of a bread crusty sort of thing. Then the back third of your palate, you've got a little bit of the bread crusty layer. On top of that, you've got the bread crusty layer. Now that's a wee bit more grainy because you're at the back of the palate. Remember, the back of your palate shows the more kind of bitter flavours, the front of your palate shows the more sweeter flavours, or the sweeter flavours. Brain's not working. But yeah, on top of that you've got those kind of the brown bready notes again, and again that's a little bit more sort of grainy and things, and the layer is a little bit thicker, I would say. Then on top of that you can feel the kind of yeasty character of the beer. Now I've always found that in West Coast IPAs the yeastiness is a little bit lighter, but you can feel it's that sort of doughy kind of bready type thing, which I think is really quite nice. But it's like a little bit more of a kind of dense, very slightly kind of spicy, flowery bread sort of thing. It's like a really fresh wholemeal but dense bread sort of thing that you're getting there on the back half of that front third of your palate, on the back third of your palate. Brain's not working. Yeah, so on the back third of your palate, sitting on top of the brown bready layer, you've just got that more dense, doughy, yeasty kind of thing there, and I think that works really well. So when you start at the back of your palate, you can feel as you come further forward, at the back of your palate the flavour is a little bit taller, but as you move further forward the flavours just condense down a little bit, so they're a wee bit more squashed together, and that's kind of what you quite often find in these in these West Coast IPAs, but really nice malt base and yeasty side of the beer from Kinnegar. Once again, not surprised considering the beers we've had from these guys before. Solid brewery. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then, the green component first. And to be honest, the green component is kind of what you would expect, to be quite frank. So at the back corners of the palate, there is a wee bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a little. It's almost got a wee teeny bit of a herbal quality, but then you can feel the sort of deeper, piney, resinous kind of character coming out of this one. It does have a bit of dankness to it, this beer. There's maybe a little touch of spiciness to it as well, which makes me wonder, could there be a wee bit of Columbus in this one? Now you need to remember with West Coast IPAs that these guys usually have quite a little bit of early edition hopping, and it's early edition hopping that gives you the bitterness. And then, you know, the New England IPAs and West Coast IPAs both have late edition hopping, which is mainly flavour and aroma, but a little bit of bitterness, and then dry hopping, which is completely flavour and aroma. But the West Coast IPAs are unique in the fact that they have those early edition hops, and that's usually what gives you the dankness. Hops tend to show their kind of more green qualities when they're added in that early part of the boil. You've essentially got a trade-off during the wort boil where bitterness is sacrificed in favour of flavour and aroma progressively. So yeah, you can feel that slightly deeper dankness to this one. So a nice bit of pine resin, bit of floral aromatic spice, but then round the front curve of the palate there, you've got a little bit of a lighter, grassier sort of thing there, and it is like a wet, freshly cut grass on this one. So yeah, I do like how that goes together, sure. But yeah, the grassiness on this one is quite nice and just makes the beer feel a little bit fresh as well, which is kind of interesting. But let's focus on the fruity part of the beer in that front third of your palate. So border region between front third and middle third, again you get a little bit of that bready build up. The base of the front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of, you get a little bit of that nice kind of smooth brown bready character there, so you can feel that just forming the backbone of the backbone of that front third of your palate. And on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. Toward the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of there is a teeny little bit of a pungent a more pungent passion fruit, but as you come further forward, it does mellow out actually, and you can feel. I'm wondering about. I think there might be a little bit of cascade in this. There's just something there, so it's interesting. Underneath all of that, on top of the bread, you just get this very light red fruity figgy sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. Yeah, that nice kind of slightly red fruity figgy sort of thing. Then at the back of the front third of your palate, there's a wee bit more of that passion fruity note, and then it just mellows out to be a little bit more oily and passion fruity as you reach the kind of midpoint of that front third of your palate. I do think there's Simcoe in this. There is just something telling me that there's Simcoe in this beer. And then as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's a big zesty oily orangey character, and I think that's music. I think it could be, I think it's Amarillo. I'm leaning towards saying Amarillo because of how oily it is, but it could be a little bit Mosaic, and Mosaic would explain a bit of the earthiness in the back of the corner of the palate too. But yeah, as I say, I don't know exactly when this beer was released. This brewery is about 10 years old, so it could well be Amarillo. Amarillo back in the day was always that the big orangey hop that was used. So yeah, the front half of your palate is that big oily orangey zest, and then you can feel just as you reach the kind of front tip of the tongue, that's when you start getting these nice, there's a slight little bit of zestiness from the grassy character as well. So it could be, I think it's Amarillo and Simcoe that's in this. I always liked playing Guess the Hops with beers back in the day, and I feel like I can do it with this one because it's a bit more old school. Too many hop varieties these days to really get away with it. But yeah, I think Amarillo, Simcoe, maybe a bit of Cascade, and then, you know, like Columbus or Chinook, something like that, or maybe both. But yeah, this is a lovely West Coast IPA, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Let's round off the review with a look at the mouthfeel then. So, mouthfeel wise, it's definitely a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation's really nice and smooth, and it's got a big slick oiliness to it, this beer. So I really like how this, I do really like how this one goes about its business for sure. It has everything you would want from this style. It's really a nostalgia. This is, to me, this is a nice hit of nostalgia. In terms of IBU count with this beer, it does have a wee bit more bitterness to it. I think we're maybe talking about 50 IBUs at the most, but remember back in the day these beers were like 80, 90 IBUs, something like that. But it does show its dankness really nicely, and I think that compensates for it a wee bit. This is a common complaint of mine with the modern West Coast IPAs, is that they just aren't as bitter as they used to be, and that was always the big thing. You wanted these beers to just blast you with bitterness. But this one, I think, I've got a feeling this is like maybe 50, 60 IBUs, something like that. The malt base, as I've said, is really, really nice in this one. Lovely smooth bready notes and a big oily brown sugary note, which is what you want from this style. Then the fruits are very nice and oily too. So a good balance between tropical fruit, but I think it leans a little bit more towards that oily orangey side of things. But a big thumbs up to Kinnegar Brewing for this one. This is very, very nice. So yeah, I think, pardon me, we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this one was the Crossroads 6.2% West Coast IPA, properly old school and nostalgic in my opinion, from Kinnegar Brewing in Letterkenny, County Donegal in the very northwest of Ireland. An awesome beer to review this one, and I'm glad that I could review this one for you. So a big thank you again to Paul for making this review possible. Let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Kinnegar Brewing, and we do have one more to review from them in this lot of Irish beer reviews. But like I said, I do hope that I can review one or two of the lagers and something from the dark end of the spectrum from these guys at some point soon. But see you guys on the next review. Make sure you check out some of the Kinnegar Brewing beers if you get the chance. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thanks for watching.